Jason Statham wasn't the kind of man who enjoyed the spotlight outside of his movies. He preferred quiet nights, fast cars, and the occasional hands-on approach to the businesses he owned. That night, he had planned to do just that, visit his new restaurant in London under the radar. No cameras, no red carpet, just a man checking in on his own place. Dressed in a black leather jacket and a cap pulled low, Jason entered the Iron Fork, his high-end but cozy restaurant tucked in a quiet corner of the city. The atmosphere was warm, candles flickering on polished wooden tables, the hum of conversation blending with the soft clatter of plates. It was just another normal night for the staff, until he heard it. A soft, muffled sob. A server, her back turned, was standing near the kitchen doors, shoulders trembling. Jason's instincts kicked in immediately. He'd seen enough in his life to know when something wasn't right. He stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "Everything all right?" The young woman jumped, quickly wiping her tears and forcing a smile. "Oh, sorry, sir. Just a long shift." Jason narrowed his eyes. He knew a cover-up when he saw one. But before he could press further, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Get back to work, Emily. Now." Jason turned his head toward the source of the voice. A man in a tailored suit, standing near the bar with a glass of whiskey in hand. His stance was casual, but there was an unmistakable authority in his tone. Something about him immediately felt off. Emily stiffened, murmured a quick "yes, sir," and rushed toward the kitchen. Jason watched her go, then looked back at the man, his jaw tightening. "Bit harsh, don't you think?" The man chuckled, taking a slow sip of his drink. "You don't run a place like this by coddling the staff." Jason's eyes darkened. This was his restaurant, and he had no idea who this guy was. He took a step closer, his voice calm but laced with steel. "And you are?" The man smirked, swirling the whiskey in his glass. "Victor Reed, new manager." "Who the hell are you?" Jason held back a laugh. This was going to be fun. Instead of answering, he simply turned and walked away. For now, he had bigger things to figure out, like why a server was crying and why this Victor Reed was running his restaurant like a personal empire. Jason moved toward the back, slipping into the kitchen unnoticed. He spotted Emily stacking plates, her hands still trembling slightly. He leaned in. "Emily." She nearly dropped a dish. Sir. Tell me what's going on. And don't lie." Her eyes darted to the doorway, checking if anyone was listening. Then, in a hushed voice, she whispered, "Victor. He's not supposed to be here." Jason frowned. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then blurted it out. "He fired half the staff last week. Said he was given control of the restaurant by the owner." "But I don't think that's true." Jason's pulse quickened. Someone was using his name to take over his own business? Then Emily's voice dropped even lower. "And the money. Something's wrong with the money. Tips go missing. Orders get overcharged. It's like..." She swallowed hard. "Like someone's skimming off the top." Jason's expression turned ice cold. "Thanks, Emily," he said, patting her shoulder. "I'll handle it." Jason didn't confront Victor right away. No, that would have been too easy. Instead, he did what he did best, gathered intel. As the night progressed, he watched. He listened. And what he discovered made his blood boil. Victor had been funneling money out of the restaurant. Fake receipts, inflated costs, unpaid wages. And worse, he was threatening the staff. Anyone who questioned him lost their job or worse. By the time Jason had all the pieces, he was more than ready. He waited until the last customers left, until the restaurant was nearly empty. Then he walked straight up to Victor, who was counting a thick stack of cash behind the bar. Jason leaned on the counter. "Enjoying yourself?" Victor barely glanced up. "Listen, mate, I don't have time for small talk. If you're here to complain about your bill..." Jason slid a piece of paper across the counter. "A legal document." Victor frowned. "What the hell is this?" Jason smirked. "Proof that I own this place." Victor's face paled. That's not possible. I was told." Jason leaned in closer, his voice dangerously low. "You were told wrong." Victor's eyes darted around, looking for a way out. But Jason wasn't done. "You've been stealing from my business, bullying my staff, and you're about to learn what happens when you mess with the wrong guy." Victor opened his mouth to protest, but Jason moved faster. With one swift motion, he grabbed Victor by the collar and yanked him forward. "Let me go, you psycho." Victor spat, struggling. Jason smiled. "You're walking out of here, now, or I call the police, and trust me, You won't like what they find in those books you've been cooking." Victor's arrogance cracked. He knew he was caught. Jason released him with a shove. "Get out, and don't come back." Victor stumbled backward, his face twisted in anger. But he knew he was beaten. Without another word, he stormed out of the restaurant. Jason turned, scanning the room. The remaining staff were watching, eyes wide. He exhaled. Then, with a grin, he clapped his hands. "All right, everyone. Drinks on me." A cheer erupted. Relief flooded the room. And Emily? She finally smiled. That night, Jason didn't just save his restaurant. He took back what was his. Jason watched as Victor stormed out of the restaurant, but something didn't sit right. Men like him didn't just walk away. They slithered into the shadows, waiting for their moment to strike back. And Jason Statham wasn't about to let that happen. As the staff cheered and drinks flowed, Jason pulled Emily aside. "You're sure there's no one else involved?" he asked, his voice low. She hesitated. I don't know. Victor wasn't alone all the time. He had meetings, late at night. I heard him talking about someone. A partner. Jason's jaw clenched. Partner. That meant this wasn't over. And as if on cue, the front door slammed open. 4 men stepped inside, each built like a tank, their eyes scanning the room. One of them, a bald brute with a jagged scar across his cheek, locked onto Jason. "Where's Victor?" the man growled. Jason wiped the condensation off his whiskey glass with his thumb. "Gone." The man's lip curled. "That's a problem." Jason set his drink down slowly. "For who?" The man cracked his knuckles. "For you." The tension in the room turned suffocating. The staff shrank back, some rushing toward the kitchen. Jason remained still, calm, calculating. Then, in a flash, the man lunged. Jason dodged effortlessly, twisting to the side as the brute's fist barely missed his jaw. In the same motion, Jason drove his elbow into the guy's ribs, hearing the satisfying crack of bone. The man staggered back, gasping for air. His crew didn't hesitate. All 3 charged at once. Jason grabbed the closest bar stool and whipped it into the first thug's chest, sending him sprawling into a table. Another swung a bottle at Jason's head. Jason ducked and countered with a brutal right hook that sent the man crashing onto the bar. The last thug managed to land a hit, a sucker punch to Jason's ribs. Bad move. Jason barely flinched. Instead, he grabbed the guy's arm, twisted it behind his back, and slammed his head into the counter. The man crumpled. Silence. The staff stared, wide-eyed. Jason exhaled and rolled his shoulders. Anyone else? The first guy, the one with the scar, was crawling toward his phone. Jason stepped on his hand. Hard. The man groaned. "You have no idea what you just did." Jason crouched down, his voice like steel. "Who sent you?" The man spat blood, laughing weakly. "You think Victor was in charge?" He grinned. "He's nothing. You just pissed off the wrong people." Jason's eyes darkened. This wasn't just about a restaurant anymore. Before he could press for more answers, the unmistakable sound of screeching tires tore through the night air. Jason turned just as 2 black SUVs skidded to a stop outside the restaurant. Doors flew open. More men. More firepower. Jason straightened. "Of course." Emily grabbed his arm. "What do we do?" Jason smirked. "We finish this." And then all hell broke loose. The black SUVs sat growling outside the restaurant like hungry wolves. The moment the doors flew open, 6 men spilled out, dressed in dark suits, built like war machines and armed to the teeth. Jason instinctively pushed Emily behind the bar. "Stay down." His voice was low, controlled. The lead thug, a towering brute with cold, dead eyes, stepped forward. A scar cut through his lip, making his sneer even more menacing. "You must be Statham." Jason tilted his head. "And you must be the idiot who thinks showing up here was a good idea." The scarred man chuckled, adjusting his cufflinks. "Victor was a problem. You're a loose end." He gestured toward his men. "Clean this up." Weapons were drawn. Jason moved first. Before the nearest thug could raise his gun, Jason snatched a steak knife from a nearby table and hurled it, burying the blade deep into the man's forearm. The thug screamed, dropping his weapon. Jason didn't stop. He lunged forward, grabbed the injured man, and spun him around, using him as a human shield just as the first shot rang out. Bang! The bullet hit the man's shoulder. Jason shoved him aside and dove behind an overturned table as more shots shattered the restaurant's windows. Glass rained down like deadly confetti. Jason's mind worked fast. The kitchen. He needed to get to the kitchen. He vaulted over the bar just as another round of bullets shredded the counter behind him. Emily let out a muffled scream as bottles shattered, alcohol spilling everywhere. Jason grabbed a full bottle of whiskey, yanked a lighter from his pocket, and ignited the ragged end of a napkin. Emily's eyes widened. "Is that?" Jason smirked. Improvised problem-solving. With a flick of his wrist, he hurled the makeshift Molotov cocktail toward the entrance. Foam. The fireball erupted on impact, sending the thugs scrambling backward. One of them caught fire, rolling on the floor to put himself out. The others hesitated just long enough for Jason to make his move. He sprinted through the kitchen doors. Emily was right behind him. "Where are we going?" she panted. Jason scanned the area. The back alley exit. "Perfect. Out," he said. "But not before we even the odds." His eyes landed on a meat tenderizer, a butcher's knife, and a heavy iron pan. He grabbed all three. Emily blinked. "You're seriously gonna fight them with cookware?" Jason grinned. "Ever seen what a frying pan does to a skull?" The thugs stormed into the kitchen, guns raised. They expected Jason to run. Jason didn't run. The first man rounded the corner, and Jason swung the iron pan full force into his face. Crack. The thug hit the ground like a sack of bricks. The second guy rushed in. Jason spun, dodging a wild swing, and drove the meat tenderizer into his ribs. The sickening crunch of breaking bone filled the air. The last two thugs hesitated. Jason smiled, twirling the butcher's knife in his hand. "Smart. You're realizing I'm not locked in here with you." He took a step forward. "You're locked in here with me." They ran. Jason and Emily slipped out the back door, but the moment they hit the alley, a black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up. A man stepped out, older, refined, deadly. His silver hair was slicked back, his tailored suit unwrinkled despite the chaos. This wasn't just some thug. Jason recognized the man instantly. Gabriel Stone, London's underground kingpin. Gabriel adjusted his cufflinks, unfazed by the carnage. "Jason Statham." He spoke smoothly, like a businessman closing a deal. "You've been quite the nuisance tonight." Jason rolled his shoulders. "Yeah? You should see me on a bad day." Gabriel smirked. "You just cost me a lot of money." Jason tilted his head. "And you just pissed me off." Gabriel sighed, glancing toward his driver. "I was hoping this wouldn't get messy." The driver opened the trunk. Jason's jaw clenched. Inside were ropes, duct tape, and a body bag. Gabriel nodded toward his men. "Take him." Jason moved before they did. He grabbed a trash can lid and flung it like a frisbee, hitting one thug in the throat. As the man choked, Jason lunged at the second goon, grabbing him by the lapels and slamming his head into the car window. Glass exploded. Gabriel remained still, watching as Jason dismantled his men with brutal efficiency. In seconds, it was just him and Jason. Gabriel smiled. "Impressive. But tell me, Jason." He pulled a small pistol from his jacket, aiming it squarely at Jason's forehead. "Are you faster than a bullet?" A tense silence. Then, a loud engine roared. Headlights flooded the alley. A black Aston Martin drifted around the corner, tires screeching. The driver's door swung open. "Get in." Jason didn't hesitate. He grabbed Emily's wrist and dived into the car just as Gabriel fired. Bang! 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 Bullets ripped through the air, shattering the rear window as the Aston Martin peeled out of the alley at breakneck speed. Jason glanced at the driver, a familiar face behind the wheel. His old friend, Frank Martin. Frank smirked. "Figured you'd need a lift." Jason grinned. "Yeah, mate, but we've got a problem." Frank glanced in the rearview mirror, seeing two black SUVs racing after them. "Let me guess," Frank said, shifting gears. "We're not going home just yet." Jason checked the pistol he'd swiped from one of the thugs. "No," he said, rolling down the window. "We're just getting started." The Aston Martin roared through the streets of London, weaving between cars at breakneck speed. The two black SUVs behind them were relentless, their headlights glaring like predators in the night. Inside the car, Jason checked the magazine of the pistol he'd swiped. For bullets, Frank Martin, hands steady on the wheel, glanced at him. "Tell me you've got a plan." Jason smirked, rolling down the window. "Yeah, drive faster." Frank grinned. "Hold on." He yanked the wheel hard to the right. The Aston Martin drifted onto a side street, tires screeching as sparks flew from the curb. One of the SUVs overshot the turn and slammed into a parked car. but the second one stayed on them. Emily, gripping the door handle, shouted, "Where are we even going?" Jason leaned out the window, aimed, and fired. Bang! Bang! His first shot shattered the SUV's side mirror. The second hit the front tire, sending the vehicle swerving uncontrollably. The SUV spun out of control, clipped a fire hydrant, and flipped onto its roof, skidding across the pavement in a shower of sparks. One down. Jason pulled himself back inside the car. "We're going to Gabriel." Frank raised an eyebrow. "We just ran from him. Now you want to run toward him?" Jason's eyes were cold. "No, I want to end this." 20 minutes later, Frank pulled the Aston Martin into a secluded industrial dock near the Thames. The air was thick with tension. A single warehouse stood at the edge of the water, dimly lit by overhead lamps. Jason stepped out of the car, pistol in hand. He wasn't sneaking in. He wanted Gabriel to see him coming. A slow clap echoed from the darkness. Gabriel Stone emerged from the shadows, flanked by 6 armed men. "You really are a glutton for punishment, Statham," Gabriel mused, adjusting his cufflinks. "You had your chance to walk away. Now you die here." Jason cracked his knuckles. "You should have brought more men." Gabriel smirked. "Oh, I did." From behind the warehouse, 3 more SUVs rolled in, their doors flying open. More armed men flooded out, guns trained on Jason. Jason exhaled. "All right, this might be a problem." Frank muttered. "You think?" Emily, still by the car, whispered, "We're gonna die." Jason tilted his head, watching the men surround them. Then he smiled. A low rumble filled the air. Gabriel frowned. "What the?" Headlights flashed from the opposite end of the dock. Another fleet of cars roared into view. Motorcycles, SUVs, a black McLaren. Gabriel's men turned their weapons toward the approaching vehicles. Frank grinned. "You called backup?" Jason smirked. "You think I came alone?" The reinforcements skidded to a halt, and a dozen dangerous-looking men stepped out. Fighters, ex-special forces, and a few of Jason's old friends from his past. At the front of the pack stood Lee Christmas, arms crossed, a knife twirling between his fingers. "Evening, lads," Lee said, grinning. "Hope we're not late." Gabriel's face twisted in rage. "Kill them all." And then chaos erupted. Gunfire exploded in the night as both sides clashed. Jason lunged into the fray, dodging bullets as he tackled one of Gabriel's men, slamming his face into a steel crate. He grabbed the fallen man's shotgun and fired into the crowd, taking down 2 more enemies. Frank, using the Aston Martin for cover, picked off shooters with a silenced pistol. Lee Christmas went to work with his knives, taking down enemies with brutal precision. Emily, ducking behind a stack of barrels, grabbed a fallen pistol and started firing wildly. The fight was fast, brutal, relentless. One by one, Gabriel's men fell, until it was just Gabriel left. Gabriel, bloodied but still composed, stood near the edge of the dock, a gun pressed against Emily's head. Jason froze. Gabriel smirked. "Looks like I still have the upper hand, Statham." Jason's jaw tightened. "Let her go." Gabriel pressed the gun harder against Emily's temple. "Drop your weapon." Jason exhaled. Slowly, he lowered his gun to the ground. Gabriel chuckled. "Smart. You know, for a moment, I thought you were actually going to win." Then Emily moved. She stomped on Gabriel's foot, twisted her body, and bit his arm. Gabriel yelled in pain. Jason moved like lightning. He lunged forward, snatched the gun from the ground, and fired. Bang! The bullet hit Gabriel dead center in the chest. His eyes widened in shock. His grip loosened. He stumbled back, teetering at the edge of the dock. Jason stepped closer. "You stole from me. You threatened my people. And you made one fatal mistake." Gabriel coughed, blood dripping from his lips. "And what was that?" Jason's eyes were cold as steel. "You pissed off the wrong guy." Then, with one final push, Jason sent Gabriel Stone toppling into the Thames. The splash echoed into the night. Gabriel was gone. The battle was over. The warehouse was silent. Lee Christmas exhaled, wiping blood from his knife. "Well, that was fun." Frank shook his head. "Remind me to never go to dinner with you again, Jason." Emily, still catching her breath, looked at Jason. "Is it over?" Jason watched the river, where Gabriel had disappeared. Then he turned back, smirking. "Yeah, it's over. For now." He dusted off his jacket, pulled out a cigarette, and turned to Frank. "Let's get out of here." I need a drink. Frank chuckled, unlocking the Aston Martin. Next time, mate. Let's just go to a pub. Jason laughed. Yeah, next time. The car roared to life, and as the sun began to rise over London, Jason Statham did what he did best. Walked away like a legend.